This work of fiction is intended for mature audiences. It contains themes of psychological horror and violence presented in a restrained manner. All characters and events are entirely fictional. The narrative is not intended to glorify or encourage harmful behavior.
I had dedicated nearly 3 decades to patrolling Chicago's rain-drenched thoroughfares, yet nothing in my extensive service had readied me for the malignancy that would soon befall our metropolis. On an overcast evening, when the city's luminous signs blurred beneath a steady drizzle, I received an urgent alert. A report of a dreadful incident had come in from a long-abandoned industrial depot in the Southern District. The troubling dispatch, heavy with dread, sent a chill down my spine. Upon reaching the derelict facility, I was confronted by a spectacle that shocked even me. In a cavernous, forsaken warehouse, where echoes of a forgotten era mingled with a present doom, lay the dismembered body of a once-revered clergyman, Pastor Calvin Myers. Known for his fervid sermons and supposed piety, he had concealed a life of greed and dishonor. Now, his body was arranged upon a crude wooden platform, with a repulsive effigy fashioned from his twisted guts and lower bowl body parts looming above him. A blasphemous parody of a dancing puppet. Clutched to his worn white blood-stained collar was a handwritten note, its scarlet script proclaiming, "Thou shalt have no other gods." I knelt beside the ghastly display, droplets mingling with dried traces of blood, attempting to unravel the symbolism behind this ritualized atrocity. Clearly, an unhinged mind had meticulously staged this desecration, using sacred precepts as the blueprint for his act of depravity. The pounding in my ears quickened as I realized that this was not a random act. It was the first chapter in a systematic purge of what the murderer deemed moral transgressions. Later, amidst the antiseptic smell of the station and under the sterile glow of fluorescent lights, I recounted the disturbing details to my captain. It was then that I was introduced to Detective Riley Thompson, a resolute investigator newly assigned from the quiet farmlands of Iowa. Accompanied by her trusted companion and life partner, Simone, Riley exuded an inner fortitude that belied the mounting dread of this nightmare. Although Riley's eyes betrayed a storm of private anguish, her unwavering determination to solve this case provided hope in the face of imminent terror. That same night, as I navigated slick sidewalks under a shimmering canopy of urban rain, every shadow appeared to harbor a secret malice. The initial transgression, a heinous violation staged with deliberate symbolism, was only the beginning of acts of retribution that threatened to engulf the city and fracture the ideals Weebao once held dear. Barely 2 nights after the first carnage, another unspeakable event emerged in the Bohemian Quarter, a part of town where artistic expression and disorder lived in harmony. I was dispatched to an abandoned art school that had once nurtured creative brilliance, but now stood as a morbid chamber of horrors. The victim was Marcus Ellison, a celebrated sculptor whose admired works had earned him worldwide renown. Yet beneath his public acclaim lay a blinding vanity, a self-obsession that transformed his artistry into an almost idolatrous pursuit. In a cruel twist of fate, the mad executioner had repurposed Marcus's own passion for form into a grotesque spectacle. His body was contorted into a pose eerily reminiscent of one of his signature statues, limbs arranged with unsettling exactness. Jagged incisions scarred his flesh, and disturbing markings, carved with a perverse deliberateness, corrupted his beautiful Botox facial features he once wore with pride. Affixed to a shattered easel was a crude letter, scribed in what appeared to be his own life's crimson essence. "Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image." I lingered amid the human carnage, scrutinizing every element, the deliberate incisions, the calculated positioning, and the overt message. The evidence was unambiguous. This was not an act of spontaneous violence. Each victim was chosen for embodying a sin against a commandment, With every detail, it became apparent that the offender was not merely punishing a misdeed, but was composing a sickening sermon through acts of meticulously orchestrated cruelty and death. Within days, our investigation took us to a dim, cluttered fleabag motel on the outskirts of the city where another body awaited. In a modest, neglected room, we uncovered the remains of Darren Holt, a notorious online provocateur, renowned for his incendiary rants and savage mockery of revered religious institutions. Darren's final moments had been rendered in a display of raw, brutal artistry. The chamber had been transformed into an unholy gallery, walls defaced with vulgar scrawls and the air reeking of sacrilegious fervor. Darren's expression, frozen in perpetual terror, bore witness to his final moments he endured, as his throat was expertly slit from ear to ear. A hastily inscribed message, scrawled in dark ink that may have been his own blood, declared, "Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain." These scenes, each more unsettling than the last, sank into my mind like a relentless tide. Every act of savagery was a twisted scripture, a public denunciation of those who transgressed sacred laws. Riley and I spent endless hours at our desks, poring over evidence and piecing together the cipher-like clues left behind. Our heated debates in the station's cramped offices grew increasingly laden with theories that bordered on the apocalyptic, as we recognized that these atrocities were meticulously planned and flawlessly executed. Then came the fourth murder on a somber Sunday morning, a day meant for time with family, introspection, and sanctity. At a dilapidated sanctuary on the fringe of a long-forgotten neighborhood, the lifeless form of Edgar Malloy was discovered. Edgar, a laborer infamous for his exploitation of workers and his flagrant disregard for basic human rights, was found arranged upon another hastily prepared, vile altar. His hands were bound in a manner that evoked a semblance of pious crucifixion, while a cluster of flickering candles encircled his form, casting trembling shadows on the cracked stone floor. On an ancient wooden bench nearby, a note bore the chilling decree, "Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy." For hours, I sat in that forsaken chapel, wrestling with the contradiction of a place once hallowed, now serving as a stage for such hideous desecration. Every symbol and sign reinforced my growing conviction. Our UnSub was a self-styled avenger, determined to enforce a sacred moral code through unimaginable brutality and disfigurement. As fear spread like wildfire through Chicago, the fifth act of horror revealed itself in an opulent mansion, nestled in one of the city's rich and most affluent areas. The victim was Miss Evelyn Lancaster, a socialite infamous for her callous disregard, neglect, and mistreatment of her aging parents. In life, she had flaunted her wealth with a disdain for familial duty and responsibility. In death, she was arranged in a bloated, grotesque banquet setting, a perverse tribute to a broken family bond. Her body was seated at an elegant, long dining table adorned with tarnished cutlery and the spoiling remnants of an extravagant feast. Amid scattered debris lay archaic video recordings of her parents' desperate pleas for help that never came, a haunting telling of indifferent affection. Dominating the floral centerpiece, an inscription on an embroidered cloth boldly declared, "Honor thy father and thy mother." The repulsive display was an assault on the sanctity of family values and left me with a searing personal anguish. At a time when I struggled to maintain order in a city descending into chaos, this act felt like a direct assault on those values I had spent a lifetime protecting and defending. Not long after, the sixth incident was discovered in a forlorn industrial zone behind a shuttered manufacturing plant. The target was Jonas Reed, a hardened criminal whose entire existence had been defined by merciless violence. Convicted for numerous murders, his past was a litany of brutality. Now his fate had been sealed by a device eerily reminiscent of a miniature guillotine, a contraption that delivered an execution, marked by unerring precision. Jonas's throat had been cleaved, and his vacant eyes were pulled out, still attached and fixed on a dark horizon as if locked in eternal judgment. Upon his chest was inscribed a single merciless proclamation: "Thou shalt not kill." The cruel irony of the scene, where a man synonymous with violence was himself dispatched with surgical precision, resonated deep within me. It was as though the vengeful unknown force had turned its own methods inward, ensuring that even the most hardened wrongdoer could not escape his personal reckoning or destiny. Our investigation surged onward, each new discovery injecting us with a mix of dread and a determined resolve. Riley and I became inseparable in our quest, our long hours filled with quiet reflection, shared theories, and moments of unspoken sorrow. In the cramped break room of our station, amid the low murmur of weary colleagues, Riley once confided in a hushed tone, "Back in Iowa, I never could have imagined that the depths of human depravity would unfold so relentlessly. I wonder if I will ever be able to forget these unholy visions." Her vulnerability struck a chord deep within me as I solemnly vowed to her that we would confront this nightmare together. The evidence was mounting, and with it, the chilling realization that our assailant was orchestrating a grand litany of retribution, each act corresponding to a sacred commandment. With 8 brutal declarations already enacted, it was evident that the final hideous act was looming, a decree to punish the sin of covetousness. The underlying threat was unmistakable. The offender's twisted moral ledger was not complete until the final commandment was grotesquely displayed. In an unexpected twist that shattered our fragile reality, the second-to-last act arrived amid the fog of a relentless storm. On a dismal night when the downpour seemed to wash away even the hardest resolve, we received word of the 9th atrocity. At a secluded home along the docks, its once proud walls now eroded by time and neglect, we found our next victim. Leonard Price, a notorious swindler whose entire existence had been built on elaborate deceptions, was discovered staged in a setting that mimicked an abandoned courtroom. His tongue had been violently severed and arranged with a disturbing precision, reminiscent of a final, silent gavel strike. Torn documents and scattered legal paraphernalia littered the floor, each fragment testifying to his lifetime of dastardly deeds. Amid the wreckage lay a note, its message indelibly etched in crimson liquid: "Thou shalt not bear false witness." The horrifying spectacle was a stark reminder that our culprit's twisted campaign was approaching its grand finale. As the weight of impending judgment pressed upon us, I was struck by a new and more personal horror. That very night, during the ceaseless pounding of rain on the pavement, a frantic call came through, a call that would force us to confront the final commandment. The voice, trembling with urgency, informed us that Simone, the close life partner and wife of Detective Thompson, had vanished without a trace. I felt an icy dread seize my heart as Riley's voice, thick with anguish, murmured, "I can't locate my beloved Simone anywhere." We scoured the couple's modest dwelling, a sanctuary once filled with methodical order, now in disarray, as though abandoned in great haste. Amid scattered belongings and hastily discarded papers, we discovered a hidden folder containing photographs and a series of notes. These documents bore an uncanny resemblance to the gruesome symbols left at each crime scene. The evidence hinted at an unsettling possibility. Simone herself might have been an integral part of this diabolical scheme, or, at the very least, had been manipulated by the elusive demoness serial killer. Driven by desperation and lost love, Riley and I followed the trail to a rundown homeless shelter in the inner city, a structure cloaked in urban death and silent despair. There, in a makeshift stage illuminated only by the feeble glow of sputtering candles, I encountered a scene that would haunt my every waking moment for the rest of my life. Simone lay arranged in a scene of unutterable agony, her limbs contorted in a final, unholy scene of torment, her arms cruelly cut off in an act of deliberate savagery. Resting beside her, on a scrap of torn paper, was the final decree, scrawled in deliberate, chilling hand. "Thou shalt not covet." Riley's anguished cry shattered the oppressive silence as she rushed into the chamber. She sank to the floor beside Simone, cradling her lifeless body as a wave of profound betrayal and despair engulfed her. In that shattering moment, the true horror crystallized before my eyes. The offender's last act was not merely another brutal lesson. It was an inescapable indictment of our very souls. The madman had exploited our trust, manipulated our shared ideals, and in so doing, forced us to confront the most unpalatable truths about our own hidden sins and frailties. Before we could even process this personal tragedy, a disembodied voice emerged from the kitchen area behind a cluster of rusted pipes. Its tone was disarmingly calm, yet imbued with an air of malignant satisfaction. "Detective Cross, Detective Thompson," the entity intoned, each word resonating with cold authority. "You have borne witness to my work, and yet you remain chained to your feeble notions of morality. True justice is not a benevolent endowment. It is seized only through sacrifice." I turned slowly, my eyes meeting those of our emaciated figure whose pallid features and unnervingly luminous eyes betrayed neither remorse nor malice, only a perverse serenity. "I have executed 9 humans, each a testimony to the sins festering in this decaying society," he continued. "And now the final decree beckons. Covetousness is not merely a longing for what belongs to another. It is the relentless desire to seize that which should remain beyond your grasp, even if it means losing your soul." His gaze swept over the devastation, lingering on Riley's grief-stricken face before resting upon mine. "By revealing Simone's hidden guild, I have compelled you to confront your own imperfections. The 10th commandment exacts a price, a toll paid in blood, death, and heartache. In an instant that defied belief, he produced a small remote device and pressed a button. The ornate mirror positioned as a centerpiece shattered into innumerable shards, each fragment reflecting a distorted image of this torment. Amid the ensuing pandemonium, the otherworldly figure melted away into the labyrinth of shadows and ruin, leaving behind nothing more than a sinister, satisfying, and chilling, triumphant laugh. In the dreadful silence that followed, Riley collapsed, overcome by grief, while I sat there staring Simone's lifeless face. My mind swirled with the bitter realization that the final decree had been fulfilled in more ways than one. The killer's work was not merely a cold punishment for societal transgressions. It was a dark mirror held up to reveal the sins buried within our own hearts. In the solitary quiet of my sparse, dilapidated apartment, I now review the fragments of a case that has left indelible scars upon my soul. Files, photographs, and shattered recordings lie scattered on my desk, a silent testament to a nightmare that rewrote the rules of retribution. The haunting image of Simone, the final blood-etched message, and the ghastly pronouncements of that enigmatic murderer reverberate through my thoughts like an unstoppable freight train. In the days that followed, Riley left Chicago, unable to bear the crushing weight of her loss and betrayal. I remained behind, tormented by the certainty that the terror we witnessed was not solely inflicted by an external madman, but also dwelt within our own hidden thoughts. The once sacred instructions, now contorted into instruments of vengeance, had unveiled a bitter truth. In our pursuit of justice, we too had become entangled in the very evil we sought to destroy. Tonight, as I sit in the gentle glow of a solitary lamp while rain taps against the window, I question whether I have inadvertently become complicit in this cycle of horror. The shards of the shattered mirror, scattered across the floor like remnants of forgotten morals, serve as a constant reminder that every act of retribution exacts its price. The voice of that cold, unearthly UnSub lingers in my memory, whispering that no soul is pure, that even those sworn to uphold righteousness may harbor secret evil transgressions deep within them. Now, as the relentless drizzle of Chicago's night cloaks the city in a veil of melancholy, I wait in uneasy silence. The writings of the Forsaken, once commandments of divine decree, have been transformed into a story written in blood, death, and betrayal. A script that haunts the corridors of our shared lives. I can only wonder if the cycle of retribution will ever end, or if another dastardly deed will one day be enacted, reminding us that the darkest terror lies not in external monstrosities and monsters, but in the unyielding evil that resides within us all, just waiting for the right stressor, the right event, to then visit its horror upon us all.
Hello, my Nightmare Obsession fans. We hope you loved this story, and were almost frightened to death, left wanting even more. If so, please share video and our channel link with friends and family, and ask them to subscribe, like, comment, and share with their friends and family too. We really want to create more nightmarish horror stories for you, so please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel now. We would really appreciate it. Thanks so much.